on the screen. So depth refers to, hey guys, let's make sure we're not talking. Depth refers to the illusion of space on a flat surface. So as we can see in some of these examples, this hole doesn't look like it's only an inch deep in the ground. It seems to go on almost infinitely. So it's creating that illusion of going further back in space, even though it's just a flat image. It's how far away something seems like it looks. Like if we look at this scene here, it seems like you could walk a really long time before you even reach those mountains, even though they're the same size as all these things. So we're going to be talking about the different artistic components that make depth and how you can recreate that in your final art piece. When it comes to creating a scene with depth in it, we can divide it into 3 different parts. We have the foreground, middle ground, and background. So if you guys were to guess, just from those 3 words, which is the furthest back, do you think? Background, very good. So what makes something the background is it's going to be the farthest away, and we can tell that by the fact that all the details are going to appear smaller. It's going to be a bit less detailed. Just like how in real life, it's hard to see all the details for something really far away, it's going to look the same in a picture that we're recreating. For the middle ground, we're going to see some of those same things, where things will be smaller in the middle ground than they are in the foreground, which is the closest part of an image, but they're going to be bigger than the background. They're going to be a little bit more detailed, the colors are going to be a little bit different, but then in the foreground, that's where we're going to likely have the focus of our picture. So maybe the characters who are right up front, there's going to be the most detail, things are going to be the biggest and the least far away. An example of that here is we can see the background. So we have all of these mountains, the middle ground, and the foreground where we have all these trees right up next to the viewer. So if we're comparing the size of things, we can see how these trees are a lot bigger than these ones here. And if there's any trees on these mountains, we can kind of see right here, that looks like those might be trees. Those are even more small than these trees right here. When it comes to the colors, these ones are sort of more faded together as the atmosphere starts to recede. We see how this blue gets lighter further into the distance compared to all of this detail, and these bright colors show that emphasis in the front. So one way to practice this if we're thinking about size is I want you guys to all hold your hand up in front of your face right here. So if you're looking at your hand compared to me, I'm like maybe the same size as your hand or even smaller. In real life, of course, I'm a lot bigger than your guys' hand. But especially for my friends who are further back, you can see how that size changes depending on how far away something is. Another thing, you guys can put your hands down now. Another thing that can communicate background and things being in front of each other are layers. So if I were to draw 2 hands on the board here, I'm going to do little simple hands, little turkey hands. If we have these right next to each other, this seems like they're just the exact same distance. But if I were to change one of these hands, and do this, look at a different hand. Which hand's in front?
Left.
This one. So even though they're still about the same size, even if I were to really try and be exact with that, they're the exact same size of hand, we can still tell that this one is behind because of overlapping. So we're keeping in mind things like color, the size of objects, and overlapping objects to communicate that sense of depth. Okay, so now to look at some actual examples of this from some art pieces. Remember the Bayou Tapestry?
Yeah.
So obviously this is not quite as realistic as other artworks that we may have seen. There's a lot going on, but it's kind of hard to tell a definite sense of space in these pieces. If we look at these boats, they're kind of all just stacked on top of each other. That's not really how that would look in real life. If there was a series of boats, how could we maybe change how they were drawn to make them look like they're going back into the distance? Teddy, do you have a question?
Like maybe shadow.
Shadows, that's true. Viviana?
Overlapping, making them smaller, like by their arms.
Very good. Overlapping them more. That one in the back could be smaller. Colson?
Maybe making the person with the horses in front, like bigger.
Yeah.
Make it look
Making the person bigger. Very good. Kim?
shady.
Shading, that's also true. Yeah, those shadows could maybe show something receding, or a big thing could be how colors change in a piece. Leanna, do you have any thoughts? Just kind of breathing.
No.
Okay, you're good. So to compare, if we look at these pieces, which are a bit more realistic, these are actually some Japanese woodblock prints. What does make these scenes look like they go back into space? Elena?
The person like on the left is like bigger than like the boats.
Yeah, she's bigger than the boats. Of course, in real life, she should be able to fit in them, but when they're way behind her, the boats look way smaller. Lucas?
And so she's like overlapping.
She's overlapping, yeah, she's in front of the boats. Vivian?
The water in the right one kind of just like fades into the right.
Yes, very good. One way that we can show something receding into space is to show a sort of gradation in color. I know that's kind of a big word. That's when one color changes or fades into another. So yeah, we can see this water at the front. It's a really kind of rich, deep blue, but in the background, it turns white. And what about the sky? What's happening there?
It was blue and then it turns white.
Exactly the same principle. What about if we look at the people in this picture?
Smaller.
Yep, exactly. They're smaller. So those are the kind of things you want to keep in mind. Changing the size of things, changing the colors of things, and overlapping them.